Welcome back to Movie Rewind. Today I will tell you about a horror, sci-fi, thriller movie from 2019 titled The Platform. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The movie begins in a commercial kitchen, where a large meal is prepared by a team of chefs. A narrator says there are three types of people: the ones above, the ones below, and the ones who fall. Our protagonist, a young man named Goreng, wakes up in a concrete cell where he is greeted by an older man who introduces himself as Trimagasi. As Goreng looks around the room, he is told that they are on level 48 of the pit, and that the month has just begun. Trimagasi then says he wonders what their food will be, which Goreng asks him to expand upon, and he answers that it is whatever the ones above leave behind. They are the ones who decide. Goreng looks through the rectangular opening in the center of the room and sees an endless number of identical spaces below them, and the same when he looks above. He goes to shake his cellmate's hand, but gets refused, so he asks him to explain how everything works. Trimagasi says that it's obvious, they will eat. The difficulty of said task is determined by what level you are on, but 48 is not a bad level. Goreng asks him how many are below them, and he cryptically replies there are not many, but soon there will be less. He calls out to the level below, but Trimagasi stops him. He says that you don't talk to the ones below, nor the people above. Trimagasi goes on to say that he has been there for many months, and that they will spend exactly 1 month on level 48. A buzzer then sounds and the light on the wall changes from red to green. Trimagasi tosses his pillow on the floor and kneels on it as a large platform, full of food scraps, lowers through the hole in the ceiling, and he fervently begins eating. Goreng can only stare at the platform, disgusted at the idea of eating 94 people's leftovers. Trimagasi excitedly drinks from a bottle of wine, noting that they are very lucky this month as many of the people above are either Muslims or non-drinkers. He asks if Goreng isn't going to eat, and Goreng finds an untouched apple which he places in his pocket for later. The buzzer goes off again and the platform begins descending. Goreng points out that the room is getting noticeably warmer, and he's casually told that the temperature will continue to rise, eventually reaching fatal levels, unless he returns the apple. The penalty for any food being kept is extreme temperatures, either hot or cold. Goreng throws the apple back onto the platform and the temperature immediately normalizes. Goreng then begins sharing why he came to the pit. He signed up to spend 6 months in the pit, in exchange for an accredited degree. He also wanted to read Don Quixote. All inmates are allowed to bring one personal item of their choosing, and he chose the book. Trimagasi interrupts him, shocked that he came voluntarily. He then rolls over and questions why he isn't receiving anything for his time spent there. That night, a loud rumbling wakes Goreng and he walks to the opening to see where it's coming from. Trimagasi tells him to stand back, and the platform flies upward through the opening in the room. The following day, Trimagasi eats while Goreng again refuses. When the platform moves on, Trimagasi shares his reason for being in the pit. While watching television he saw an infomercial for the Samurai Max, a state-of-the-art knife sharpener that promised to sharpen any household knife. The ad was very compelling, so he purchased one, only to later see another infomercial for the Samurai Plus, a self-sharpening knife. Feeling duped, he tossed his television out the window, which crushed and killed a man passing by. Because he was an illegal immigrant, and therefore shouldn't have been there in the first place, Trimagasi says the pedestrian was at fault. He was given 2 choices, a year in the pit, or be remanded to a mental asylum. Goreng quickly changes the subject, asking how many levels there are, and Trimagasi says he's not certain, but he knows there are at least 132 because he has stayed there, and levels still existed below. Goreng asks how much food makes it to level 132, and he replies none at all. He continues, saying that he still ate, just that no food made it there on the platform. Left to draw his own inferences, Trimagasi then reveals that his one personal item was the Samurai Plus. Another day passes. Trimagasi is using his knife to count the days when a body suddenly drops from the opening above. Goreng is horrified, but Trimagasi seems unfazed, noting that it is a regular occurrence. The platform then arrives, carrying a disheveled Asian woman, Miharu. Trimagasi thinks nothing of it and eats around her, explaining that Miharu descends the pit every month in search of her missing son. She also kills her new cellmate each month, in the hopes of finding her son at the following month's cell rotation. Trimagasi says everyone can behave however they want while in the pit, and that the person who fell was likely Miharu's cellmate and pushed by her. The platform continues down and Miharu is pulled off by the 2 men on level 49. Goreng calls out for them to stop, but Miharu kills both men and returns to the platform. She looks up at Goreng, emotionless, as it continues its descent. The month goes on and Goreng begins settling into his surroundings. He eats heartily when the platform arrives each day, indulges in the wine, and reads his book to Trimagasi at night. One night in particular, Trimagasi asks if he believes in God, then says to pray for them. The room will be filled with gas overnight, and tomorrow they will wake up in a different cell. Goreng opens his eyes and finds himself gagged and bound to his bed. Trimagasi appears and points out that they have been moved to level 171. He says that although he has come to enjoy Goreng's company, he must also take into consideration his own safety. Goreng is a much younger man, and the starvation will inevitably drive him to insanity. As other prisoners wake up to discover they are on a lower level, their screams can be heard from the opening and one person throws himself into the pit. The platform arrives holding nothing but empty plates, which Trimagasi throws in frustration. He explains that after 8 days he will begin taking small strips of flesh, then tend to Goreng's wounds to him from dying. 8 days lapse with Goreng trying to free himself and pleading with Trimagasi, but to no avail. Trimagasi tells him that the time has come, and he no longer has the strength to protest. Trimagasi places the gag back into Goreng's mouth and begins cutting into his leg. As he screams in pain, the platform arrives carrying Miharu. She sees Goreng tied to the bed and smashes a wine bottle on Trimagasi's head, then stabs him with a samurai plus. Miharu frees Goreng from the restraints and hands him the knife. He crawls over to Trimagasi and stabs him repeatedly before passing out himself. When he wakes, Goreng finds Miharu feeding herself. She brings him a piece of the meat, and gives him water when he gags on it. Before Miharu leaves he asks what her son's name is, but she does not respond. As Goreng spends the subsequent weeks sustaining himself on Trimagasi's body, he appears as a hallucination. Trimagasi's specter says that while they are both now murderers, he is the more civilized of the two. The month ends, and Goreng wakes to a small dog licking his face. He meets his new cellmate, Imo Giri, and her dog Ramses, and discovers that he is on level 33. As Goreng breathes a sigh of relief, Imo Giri addresses him by name, at which point he realizes that she was the person who conducted his admission interview. He recalls their meeting, during which Imo Giri asked him about any existing food allergies or dietary restrictions. She had also noted that his favorite food, snails with garlic butter, would be added to the menu. Imo Giri refers to the pit as a vertical self-management center, and says that there are 200 levels. Goreng says there's not enough food for 200 levels, but she insists that they prepare enough to last if everyone ate only what was needed. The platform arrives, Goreng eats while Imo Giri prepares 2 plates, before feeding Ramses. She plans to give her ration to Ramses every other day, but Goreng says that she may be taking food from a child. He tells her that at least one child is in the pit, but she is adamant that no one under 16 is permitted, no exceptions. The platform moves on and Imo Giri shouts to the men below that she has prepared 2 plates for them. She asks them to kindly eat only their ration, then prepare a plate for the next level, and so on. They angrily respond that they are starving, having just come from level 88, and begin eating in excess. The pit, like the outside world, is controlled by a nebulous entity known as the administration. Goreng asks what the purpose of the pit is, but Imo Giri doesn't respond. She says only that she has been working in the administration for 25 years, and that people shouldn't be so quick to judge their policies. The month continues on, Imo Giri repeats her daily routine of preparing 2 plates and asking the men below to ration their food. On the 15th day, Goreng intervenes and tells the men if they continue to ignore her, he will defecate on their food for the rest of the month. Imo Giri says that she was hoping to convince them without resorting to fear, but he maintains that this is the only way to achieve results. The next day, the platform arrives carrying an injured and unconscious Miharu. They carry her over to one of the beds, where she wakes up and speaks for the first time, saying only that it's cold. Goreng realizes that the temperature is being lowered, and chases Ramses for the piece of meat he took from the platform. Miharu spends the night in their cell, and leaves on the following day's platform. Goreng watches as she arrives at the lower level and stabs both men. Imo Giri thinks back to her interview with Miharu, 10 months ago, remembering that she came to the pit voluntarily and arrived alone. An orphan child, Miharu was an actress but never had any children. Imo Giri then reveals that she has been sending people to the pit for the last 8 years but swears that she was unaware of the conditions. Goreng seems skeptical, so she opens her shirt and reveals her cancer scars. After learning that her cancer was terminal, she came to the pit to fix the system. The month comes to an end. Goreng wakes up on level 202, despite Imo Giri saying that there were only 200 floors. He sits up to find that Imogiri has taken her own life, then looks down and sees many more levels below. He experiences another hallucination, this time seeing both of his now deceased cellmates. Imogiri encourages him to consume her dead body, but Goreng refuses, ultimately eating pages of his book instead. After many days of watching the platform arrive full of empty plates, he finally succumbs to the hunger. He falls into a deep sleep and wakes up to find Miharu sleeping in his cell. She walks over to stab him with the samurai plus when Goreng sits up screaming. Miharu had been another hallucination and he is now on level 6 with a new cellmate. Bharat, a deeply religious man, carries a rope over his shoulder and calls out the couple above them. He tells them that God spoke to him and told him to escape, noting that 2 compassionate individuals would help him and be deeply rewarded for doing so. Bharat tosses one end of the rope to them and begins pulling himself up. He is almost to the next level when the woman bends over and defecates on him, sending his rope down the pit and forcing Goreng to pull him back from the ledge. The platform arrives shortly after, full of food, but Bharat refuses to eat. That night, despite having only 1 month remaining, Goreng convinces Bharat to descend the platform with him, where he'll convince the others to ration their food. Based on his time in cell 202, he estimates there are roughly 250 levels in total. They will then stay on the platform and ride it all the way back up. They use the bed frame to make weapons and prepare to descend the next day. Goreng says they shall only distribute food below level 50, since anyone above that is already well fed. The platform descends and they immediately encounter resistance from one of the men on level 7. He aggressively grabs a plate and Bharat strikes him in the head. With the tone now set, they continue traveling down, using force against anyone who refuses to comply. The platform stops before an older man in a wheelchair, who Bharat seems to have a relationship with. He suggests that convincing people will be far more impactful than threatening them. He says the best way to deliver their message to the administration is to leave the beautifully prepared plate of panna cotta untouched, and send it up on the platform to level 0. While the administration itself may not have a conscience, the people that work on level 0 likely do. The men agree and the panna cotta is covered. As they continue descending, the prisoners become increasingly more aggressive, but they are steadfast in their determination. The food is protected until they reach level 51, where they begin distributing rations to the grateful prisoners. As they approach one of the lower levels they find a man's corpse, and the platform doesn't stop moving. They continue past several more levels and discover that the platform doesn't stop if the occupants are already dead. Further down, they hear Miharu screaming and find her being accosted by 2 men. Before they can intervene, Miharu is fatally stabbed and Goreng jumps on her attacker, holding him down and punching his face repeatedly. Bharat defends Goreng from the man's cellmate but gets badly cut by a sword. Miharu's killer pushes Goreng off and begins striking him, before choking him with both hands. Bharat wrestles the sword away and kills both men before pulling Goreng back onto the platform. Now completely barren of food, aside from the untouched panna cotta, the platform passes level 250 and continues descending, finally stopping on level 333. Bharat assumes they have reached the bottom and prepares to ascend back up, but Goreng spots a young girl hiding underneath the bed. He rolls himself off the platform and it departs without them. He tells Bharat to toss the panna cotta, but Bharat refuses to do so. The platform continues descending but this time the temperature doesn't change. The little girl, who bears a striking resemblance to Miharu, crawls out from under the bed, and they feed her the panna cotta before passing out from exhaustion. Goreng then has a series of hallucinations, culminating with Bharat telling him that the girl is the message, as she sleeps quietly atop the platform. He wakes up and finds that the real Bharat has died from blood loss, and the little girl is lying on the bed. The platform returns the next day. Goreng wakes the young girl and helps her to the platform. They ride it down to the bottom, unable to even see the facility, where Trimagasi's ghost returns. He tells Goreng that the message does not require a bearer and encourages Goreng to leave with him. The 2 men walk away, and the platform rapidly ascends upward. Okay guys, thank you for watching. Please leave a like on the video, and subscribe to see more.